My husband deceived me about a work trip, but I discovered that his terminally ill ex wanted to see him one last time. I'm a 29-year-old woman, and my husband, who's 30, is named Dan. He told me he was going on a business trip, but later, I learned that it wasn't for work at all. He went to visit his dying ex-girlfriend to fulfill her final wish of seeing him again. Now, I'm left questioning my entire marriage and trying to understand how it all went so wrong. Dan and I have been together for almost 7 years and married for 4. We met through mutual friends in our early 20s and hit it off immediately. Dan was funny, charming, and had a relaxed confidence that attracted people to him. He was different from the other guys I had dated. Everything felt easy with him, like we were two pieces of a puzzle that fit perfectly together. After about 2 years of dating, Dan proposed. I still remember that moment vividly. We were on a trip in the mountains by a lake at sunset when he pulled out a small, simple ring and asked me to marry him. It wasn't extravagant, but I loved its simplicity. It was just us in our own little world, and I couldn't have been happier. We got married a year later in a small ceremony with our closest friends and family, and it was perfect. In the beginning, our marriage was wonderful. We were one of those couples that others admired, thinking we had it all together. We both had stable jobs, Dan in tech and I in education. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable and, most importantly, happy. However, about 8 months ago, things began to shift. Dan lost his job due to company layoffs. It wasn't his fault, but he took it hard. I tried to reassure him, saying it was just a bump in the road, and I was confident he'd find another job soon. Dan, however, struggled more than I expected. He started to pull away, and I thought it was just the stress of being unemployed. I tried to support him by picking up extra shifts at work and cutting back on spending, but I didn't realize how much he was distancing himself. About 3 months into his unemployment, he began acting differently. He became more emotionally and physically distant, constantly on his phone. When I asked who he was texting, he would just say it was a friend or a former coworker. I didn't press him too much, thinking he needed space. Then, out of nowhere, Dan mentioned a freelance opportunity. He said an old colleague had contacted him about a potential project, and he needed to go out of town for a few days to meet clients. He was vague about the details, but I didn't think much of it at the time. I was just relieved that he finally had something happening for him. He told me he'd be gone for about 4 days, leaving the next morning. I helped him pack, kissed him goodbye, and wished him luck. I was genuinely excited for him after months of feeling like he was in a slump. However, things took a strange turn. The first day of Dan's trip seemed normal. We texted a bit, and he said everything was going well despite being busy with meetings. But by the second day, something felt off. Dan stopped responding to my messages. Hours would pass with no reply, and when I called, it went straight to voicemail. I began to worry but tried to brush it off, thinking he was just caught up with work or that his phone had died. By the third day, I was in full-on panic mode. I hadn't heard from Dan at all since the previous afternoon, and every call went straight to voicemail. I texted him repeatedly, asking if he was okay, but there was no response. I was terrified that something was wrong. Finally, late that night, Dan texted me, claiming he had been in meetings all day and his phone had died. He apologized for not getting back to me sooner, but something about his message felt rehearsed, as if he had prepared an excuse for the right moment. I didn't want to start a fight, especially since he was on a work trip that could help him get back on track, so I let it go. Dan returned late on the 4th day, looking drained. He avoided eye contact and seemed guilty. When I asked about his trip, he shrugged and mumbled that it was fine but stressful. I asked more questions about whom he met and what the project was about, but his answers were vague, like he was dodging specifics. Something was still off, but I didn't press him. That night, as Dan slept beside me, I lay awake, my mind racing. I couldn't shake the feeling something was wrong. My instincts screamed that he wasn't being truthful, but I had no proof, just a gut feeling. I tried to convince myself I was being irrational. Dan had never given me a reason not to trust him. But the business trip, the silence, and the guilty look in his eyes felt wrong. I couldn't take it anymore, I needed answers. The next morning, while Dan was in the shower, I made a choice I regret. I grabbed his laptop, opened it, and started checking his emails. I knew it was an invasion of privacy, but I needed to know the truth. It didn't take long for me to find what I was looking for: an email from her, Amy, his ex-girlfriend, the one he had said was out of his life for years. The subject line made my heart drop. "Please, I need to see you." My hands shook as I read it. "Dan, I know this is a lot to ask, but I really need to see you. The doctors say I don't have much time left, and I need to talk to you one last time. It would mean everything to me." I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Amy, the woman he claimed to have cut ties with, was dying and wanted to see him again. He had gone to see her. I couldn't breathe, my world felt like it was crumbling. How could Dan do this to me? Why lie about a business trip when he was really visiting his ex? Why keep this from me? I spent the rest of the day in a daze, replaying the email in my mind. When Dan came home later, I was ready to confront him. As soon as he entered, I asked him directly why he had lied to me. He looked confused at first, but then I told him I had seen the email from Amy. His face turned pale and he stood there in shock. "I wasn't lying," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want to tell you." "What didn't you want to tell me?" I snapped. "That you went to see your ex-girlfriend while she's dying? That you lied about a business trip? What else are you hiding from me?" He sighed and sat at the kitchen table, running his hands through his hair. "It wasn't like that. Amy reached out a few weeks ago. She's dying and wanted to see me one last time. I didn't want to go, but I felt like I owed it to her." "Owed it to her?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You're married to me, Dan. You don't owe her anything." He flinched at my words but didn't argue. "I know," he said quietly. "I didn't want to hurt you." His words echoed in my mind, stabbing at my heart. I didn't want to hurt you, that was all he could say. But he had hurt me. He had lied and kept secrets he had no right to keep. It wasn't just about Amy, it was the betrayal, the choice to deal with this alone while leaving me in the dark. We didn't talk much after that. Dan tried to explain, saying he hadn't seen Amy in years and that nothing romantic happened between them. He insisted she just needed closure before she passed away and that he couldn't say no to her. He apologized repeatedly, but the damage was done. I was hurt and angry, unable to listen. All I could think about was his betrayal. The trust between us was shattered, and I didn't know if it could ever be repaired. Weeks later, we learned that Amy had passed away. Dan was devastated, but I couldn't bring myself to care. I know that sounds harsh, but I was too consumed by my own pain to feel sympathy for him. He made his choice, and now he had to face the consequences. About 6 months after Amy's death, we reached our breaking point. One night, after yet another argument, Dan packed his bags and left, saying he needed space to figure things out. I didn't stop him, I needed space too, to find out who I was without him and the lies that tore us apart. Now we're separated, and I'm unsure if we'll reconcile. Part of me wants to believe we can rebuild what we once had, but another part knows some things can't be mended. Once trust is broken, it's nearly impossible to regain. I'm still processing everything. Some days I feel overwhelmed with anger and sadness, other days I feel a strange sense of relief that the truth finally came out, that I'm no longer in the dark. It's been a few months since our separation, and I'm slowly starting to rebuild my life. It's not easy, some days I miss him and think about our good times, wondering if we could return to that place. But then I remember the lies, the secrets, the betrayal, and I know that even if we tried to start over, things would never be the same. I've learned a lot from this experience, that trust is the foundation of any relationship and that once it's broken, it's hard to repair. I've learned that sometimes, the people you love the most can hurt you the deepest. Ultimately, you have to choose yourself, even if it means walking away from someone you thought you would spend your life with. As for Dan, I don't know where he is or what he's doing. We haven't spoken since he left, and honestly, I'm not sure I want to. He made his choice and now I'm making mine. I'm moving on, one step at a time.